So today we're going to do an interview with Carla Davis, who is a professional tennis instructor, coach, because it's always been fascinating to me, tennis coaching, especially in that you could teach it for all the years of someone's life, and especially now with things like obesity and AI. I'm just curious of how tennis coaches make it work these days, right? Mm-hmm. All right, Carla, how are you?
Good.
If you don't mind me asking, Carla, your age?
About to turn 46 in a few days.
I don't think we should ask a woman that, but I think prudent to the discussion.
That's okay.
So tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
Originally born in Queens, New York. Lived in Belize for a little while at a very young age. Moved back to New York. Lived in Florida. Lived everywhere actually. But most of my, I would say, young childhood spent in New York, and then the rest in Florida.
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit. So you said you were from Queens.
Queens, New York, yes.
And you then went to Belize. So how did that happen? Tell us a little bit about the. Now, how old were you when you went to Belize?
About 2.
Oh, so very
2
young.
and 3. I don't remember much. I remember bits and pieces of it.
So still kind of in the language processing period, you know? So I'm guessing maybe Spanish, Espanol was your first language?
Yes, my grandmother and my grandfather on my dad's side lived there, and I stayed with them for a little while. I got to learn Spanish there, yes.
So do you recall any of the reasons why? Why did you have to go to Honduras? Why did you have to go to Belize? Why did that occur?
From what I recall, my dad said that, my grandfather never had a daughter, and I was the firstborn for my parents, and, they wanted to spend time with me, and I guess because he never had a daughter, he wanted to, enjoy time with a granddaughter, or maybe see how it is to have a little girl around the house. My dad comes from a family of 3. He had 2 other brothers, and, maybe, I don't know. I guess my dad felt that would be nice for them. I don't know.
Very interesting. So I know a lot of us don't remember things when we're that young. We just hear about kind of the stories when we're older. But do you remember any of the time in Belize at that age?
I remember bits and pieces. I mean, I remember, the dogs that my grandparents had. I remember some of the kids I used to play with, starting school over there. A few things, I guess. A few of the fun moments. I remember, my grandparents always buying me this thing in ice, that was flavor. I guess they fill up this plastic bag with flavor stuff. It's an ice, I guess. What would you call it here? Snow cones or something like that?
Or like a shaved ice, or a popsicle.
Yeah. So I remember that a lot. I remember they were Jehovah's Witness, so I remember going with them, a lot to preach and stuff. So yeah, I remember those few things.
So you just mentioned Jehovah's Witness. I'm not very literate on how that works, but not necessarily pushing buttons. But was religion a big part of your upbringing? Was this Jehovah's Witness part of your,
It was introduced to us. It was part of our life. Sure, yeah.
Okay. You also mentioned your grandparents in Belize had dogs. Do you remember? You can tell a lot about people by the type of dog they have. I just, I like pit bulls and German short-haired pointers. Go figure, 2 opposite spectrums. But I try to keep one of each. What do you recall? What type of dogs? They were just mutts or just?
Dobermans. 2 big Dobermans. I have pictures of them where my grandmother. I still have the pictures where they. She said they wouldn't let anybody near me. They would protect me when I played outside their front door. And it would be two big Dobermans right next to me, just like you see in statues, like on movies and stuff.
Kind of like the Guardians,
yeah.
The Guardians at the gate.
Yeah, they wouldn't let anybody get close to me. So, they were like my pets, and I guess my guardians at the same time.
Interesting that you were in Belize, which is Central American, and you have Doberman Pinschers, which are German, I think, and historical, I think.
Yeah.
In comments, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so. So is there any correlation between the history of those in Belize and Germany, or they just liked the dog?
I think they just liked the dogs, because I thought Belize was like at one point owned by the British. I thought, like British of Honduras, all the Central American countries, from what I know.
Yeah, and I did hear that after like World War II, a lot of different, Eastern Europeans moved to Central and South America to kind of flee persecution or whatever after the war. So I'm guessing some of the dogs that you would see in Europe ended up there because of some of that as well.
Could be. I mean, I don't remember them. I mean, after going back many times, they didn't have any other Dobermans. That was the only time they had the 2 Dobermans.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so you so born in Queens, moved to Belize.
Orange Walk Town,
What-
Belize.
with your
which is not the tourist area, by the way.
I'm sorry, repeat the
It's
name.
not the tourist area. A lot of people go to Belize, but they go, to the tourist area, like San Pedro Sula, San Pedro. They go to, the islands to go diving and stuff. This is more of the poor area.
And what was the town that you?
Orange Walk Town.
Orange Walk Town, and this is in Belize.
Yes.
Very interesting. So how old were you when you moved? I'm guessing you're here in the United States, so I'm guessing you moved from Belize back.
Yeah.
At what point did you move back? And at this point, how you had to be reproduced from somewhere.
Right.
So you went to Belize with your grandfather. Your parents had you go there, and then you came back. At what age and what was going on? What were your parents doing at that point in time?
I know my dad, from what I remember, he picked me up with my mom and my brother. I remember starting kindergarten in New York. So I'm guessing I was 5 or 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
So in kindergarten, we already, as young human beings, we're born with that kind of blank slate, a tabula rasa, they say. In kindergarten, you can already speak pretty good. I have 5 children myself, and I remember all of them speaking very good at the kindergarten age. So I'm guessing at this point, Spanish was your only language, so you then had to learn English?
I don't remember learning English. I really don't remember that. I did know Spanish. My parents, we moved when we came back to New York. They were living in Brooklyn. So I think I even remember the name of the school. It was PS 94.
Brooklyn, make some noise.
Yeah. PS 94, which is close to Sunset Park for those that know Brooklyn really well. And I remember them putting me in bilingual class.
Nice.
I stayed in bilingual class till 5th grade.
I think I know coaches as well, and I've always heard my coaching career and from other international coaches. I'm not international. I'm American or Caucasian American. But I have heard, I've been around this game my whole life as well, and I've heard so many international coaches laugh when they see other international coaches coaching that they think shouldn't be, and I'm like, why are you laughing? They're like, all that person knows, all that coach knows is that Americans are too dumb to just look at someone and think if they have a foreign accent and they got dark skin, that they're the best thing since sliced bread. So I always thought it was funny. Have you heard this? That a lot of times parents will just sign up with a coach that just looks the part, even though they may have no qualifications? You've heard this?
All the time, yes.
So this is like one of those things, sorry to deviate, this is one of those things where it's kind of like a scam for some tennis coaches. I look international, I want to do something new, let me just go pass this test. I look the part so I can just go scam parents type thing.
I think it's just because we have a lot of international players that are very good, so they assume that they can coach well.
Yeah.
I guess that's the assumption.
All right, sorry for the deviation. So you moved back, and so you were 8, you said, when you moved back kindergarten?
I'm guessing if you're in kindergarten, what, you're 5 or 6?
5 or 6?
I don't know, I started school on time, so yeah, I'm guessing 5 or 6.
Okay, so at what point in Brooklyn did tennis become part of your life, and how so?
Well, I know my dad was a soccer player, and I think when he moved to United States, I know he went to Canada first, then New York.
So he was a traveling soccer player, or just loved soccer?
No. He worked for an airline company called DACA.
Okay.
And so I guess...
He worked on airplanes?
No, he just worked for the airline company, and I
Okay.
think that they gave him a visa to go to Canada. He went to go after a Canadian girl that he was in love with, and that didn't work out, so he moved to New York and met my mother, but they knew each other when they were little, so they were just, coincidence, they were in the same place or the same area, so they got to see each other again, and they hooked up, and whatever, they had me, and but I know my dad learned tennis in his 30s, so he learned how to play first, and I remember watching him play with his friends. I had no interest in tennis at that point. My brother was 4 years younger than me, and I remember him starting before me. He was 6 years old, I think, when he started, which puts me at 10, and he would ask me, do you want to play tennis? And I would say no. I'd ride my bike. He would play at this park in Brooklyn called Leif Erikson Park. It's still there. I looked it up. It's still there. They're still teaching and doing programs there. I didn't start playing until 11 years old. I remember riding my bike around the park while my dad was coaching my brother, and sometimes he would teach other kids as well. I watched this young girl, I remember her name, Candace, and she was playing tennis, and I was like, oh, I could do that. And that's when I started becoming interested in tennis. I was 11 years old when I started.
Wow, very interesting. So in Brooklyn at that point in New York, there was a small tennis community, which we know tennis is a small but global community. And you began playing so at age 10 or 11?
11.
And so your father introduced you to it after he learned to play, or
Correct.
after he basically, knowing your father, he taught himself, per se. So, okay, so you went from an 11-year-old learning to play to now a professional tennis coach. So what did you start to play tournaments or something? Did you begin to have lessons, or how did you get to this point from that just beginner playing tennis with your dad in Brooklyn?
Well, my dad, as he knows, and he's probably going to watch this, he made you work really hard. He told me I had a year to catch up to all the kids that had been playing for a while. Leif Erikson, they had a program, well, New York does, they had a program where in the summer times they'd have the coaches teach the kids for free. And then these kids would get to play matches, they get to compete against the other boroughs. And so my dad said, you have a year to catch up. You're gonna train for a year. And they would put little tournaments. My dad would put tournaments with other people there at the park, and they decided to throw a tournament in a year. I guess it was summertime. He's like, you got a year to catch up, so he would train me. And my dad wasn't easy. It was not like he was being nice, he was being really tough. I think I don't remember if I had a coach. I think I did. There was a Canadian coach named Bob. He was an older coach that would teach me how to, the volley, the mini tennis. And then there was another coach that he also got for me. His name was Steve Carberry. I think he still teaches. And he's the one that basically got into the ground strokes and, and everything else. And then my dad coached me as well. So in a year, I had to really make some progress, which I did.
I find it interesting on your story here that you mentioned you had this one coach for this and one coach for that. I remember my days as a junior player in California, and my father was a doctor in the Navy, and so we moved all over the place. And at various points in my life, I would have a coach or mentor in a different state. I would have multiple in one state. I had Norm Pollock, who was as well a Canadian coach. I had Brad Humphreys at San Diego and Sanitas. And we all work together, or they all work together.
Right.
And in my personal experience, I found that in coaching, it's all about networks and who you have aligned yourself with throughout those years. And if you're passionate about doing so, then you'll actually soak that up. Like, you soak up things if you're interested in it, and you don't if you're not. And what I say is some of the coaches these days, you can tell they're not passionately interested in it by the way they teach. It's just so out of a textbook. Anyway, sorry to deviate, but I think it's great to hear that you had multiple coaches at that point in time that were working together as coaches, because I think the coaches today are very selfish. They're too worried about losing a student. And, I think that boils down to the economics. Everything's tougher out there, and we'll get into that. But it's great to hear that you grew up in the same aspect of sport as I did, with multiple coaches.
I did.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I've heard of this part. And it's kind of been tossed around in the tennis community, like subtly over the years. But this park in Brooklyn, did it ever have metal nets?
Yeah. So I remember when my dad used to play tennis there, the park had nets, but then people started stealing them.
Oh, so they put metal ones in.
Right. So people would start stealing them. So when you would go play, there were no nets. My dad decided to invest in a net. So he'd bring his own net. I remember he'd put it in a bag. It was very heavy. If you had a net, well, then you got lucky because you got to play for a long time because it was your net. Before they stole the nets, most people would stay there for hours playing. I remember you'd wait and wait and wait. We would sit there and wait to get our turn. I mean, nowadays you can play anytime because people don't play as much, I think. But then the park decided many years later to put metal nets, which was the worst thing I've ever seen. It's like a chain, like the fence, all chained up, so if you would hit the ball into the net or the chain net, it would make an awful noise and the ball would just bounce back. And I think then they got rid of it. I don't think it lasted too long.
You just took the thought. You just answered my thought. I was curious, you whack a ball in the net or a big time serve, and it could ricochet and hit you in the teeth or something, right?
It's horrible. I don't know why they ever came up with that. I guess maybe they thought, hey, no one would take the nets.
Great part of the story, though. That might be a highlight of the interview right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're working out with your dad. You know, kids tend to rebel against their parents. You know, and you can only, you know, I teach some of my own kids this and that, and I find that to get them to a higher level, sometimes they'll rebel and they'll think they already have the answers when you don't. So here you are with your dad, and you're a human, you're a young child at this point, and you're obviously thinking that because that's what kids do, right?
Right.
So it's almost, I'm not going to say impossible, but it's very difficult to bring your child under mom or dad's wing only and put them into high level professional tennis coaching or tournament playing. I think before we started this interview, we were discussing some of your experience with the Reebok team, or your time spent and some time with Bolletary and even running or bumping into the Williams sisters. So how did you go from the kid in Brooklyn with the metal nets that were removed because everybody kept having a ricocheted serve hit him in the face? How did you end up there into the higher levels of junior tennis? Like, who pushed you? Who motivated you? How did you get to try out for that Reebok team? How did you get to bump into Serena Venus? How did you get to spend some time at the current IMG, which is in the Bolletary camp?
Well, I mean, it was all my dad. My dad didn't give us a choice. You know, yes, I wanted to learn how to play, but at the same time, you know, I would get mad because he would keep us there for hours. My dad didn't play around. It wasn't 1 hour of tennis. It was many hours of tennis during the daytime, nighttime. He would find any time for us to play tennis. Of course, I had coaches. You know, in the wintertime, you can't play tennis in the summer, right? You have to have the bubble. So he would, you know, I would go with that coach to Prospect Park. That was another facility that
up in Prospect.
That's in Brooklyn as well. But yes, it was, I mean, thanks to my dad, I would say, I got there, you know, at the higher level. The Reebok team was because the friends that had played tennis before me, you know, they had been training a longer time. I heard that they made the Reebok team. And one of my best friends, who's still my best friend to this day, Priscilla, she played for Reebok. And I asked her, what is that? Well, how do you get to that? And she's like, well, you try out in the summer. In New York, they have two programs. I don't think they have Reebok anymore. They had two programs. It was Reebok, and the other one was NYJTL. And they would pick 50 kids in the summertime. They would all try out at Flushing Meadows, where the US Open happens. And NYJTL would have their tryouts, except they would pick like 100 kids and they would interview the parents and see how financially they're doing and see if they're the right fit for their program. So I heard about this, and my mom took me to try out. I think I was like 13 years old. So I'd only been playing tennis for 2 years at that point. And she took me to try out, and the coach that was on my court was Serena's dad, Richard Williams. And the only reason I knew that is because they were all over TV. Remember, this is when Reebok came out. The girls.
They still had the beads. And
they had the beads. They were very young. I mean, I think that Venus is my age, I think, and Serena's younger than me because I'm about to be 46. So it was their dad. He was the coach on my court, and it was many courts. It was
it's amazing. Sorry to interrupt. It's amazing that professional coaches as yourself and players, there's always a hardcore dad involved. Remember that. There's always a father figure involved. I think that's prudent for the world in which we live in today, namely, especially the USA. There's just so many young kids without dads around that do anything with them, and I think that has led to a big-time downfall in the sport in which you teach. But more on that later. So this is pre-cell phone era. This is like pre-internet. This is like 1989, 1991, somewhere in there.
Somewhere around there, yes.
So my question is, how does that network begin? How does your dad, or how do you guys reach out to get this opportunity to start spreading your tennis wings? Is it, do you know somebody? Did they just show up at your course for some reason?
No, my best friend told me about it. She's like, you need to go.
Do you know how she became?
Priscilla.
Do you know how she became involved, or not quite sure?
Well, she was playing tennis, and I remember my dad giving her a few lessons, and she did the same program, the free program they had at the Leif Erikson. And there were a few of the young guys that they said they were tennis coaches, but they weren't really tennis coaches. Looking back at it, they were just trying to help us kids. You know, they were just trying to pass on their knowledge to us, and at the same time, they were getting paid. So apparently, she made the Reebok team because I didn't see her in the summer times. That's where she was, and she told us about it because I was her best friend, and she knew that, you know, my parents, they struggle. They couldn't afford lessons all the time. They definitely couldn't afford tournaments all the time. And she's like, this is a great way for, you know, you get sponsored by them, they pay your tournaments, they travel, you know, you get to train at Flushing Meadows at the US Open. I'm like, oh, that's great, because I was born in Queens, like literally one stop away from the U.S. Open. So my mom takes me. My dad didn't go. He had to work. I remember her taking me. We take the 7th train, and we get off. And I remember I was super nervous because I really didn't know anyone but Priscilla and maybe a couple of other people. They didn't even put us on the same court. And then I had this guy, Richard Williams, and I'm like, oh, man. And, you know, he was feeding us balls. They'd want us to hit forehands, backhand volleys, play points and stuff. And then I remember whispering, some people would tell my mom, oh, she's good, she's going to make it.
Oh, your notice moment.
Yes. And I was listening, I was like, oh, I'm going to make it. And then they get all the kids together. I remember they had this court where it had stands. It wasn't in the stadium. And they didn't call my name.
You know, oddly enough, a moment ago, this reminds me of a conversation we had just a little while ago about a good friend of ours who's now a D1 coach, who was an international coach. I don't want to mention names, and was laughing about some of the people that are coaching just because they look like he does and can say good job all the time. But this kind of get to know you moment where someone noticed you, say she's good. Do you think it had anything to do with that aspect then in the 80s or 90s? Do you think in the 80s or 90s tennis had gotten so kind of not dumbed down, but it's lost a lot of its gusto, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think in those days that it had more to do with how you looked as an international player? Or do you think it had to do with raw talent? Whereas now, sometimes in the coaching world, you get a coach that's given a very big time position just because of that look and not the talent. You see what I'm saying? I think nowadays it seems like a lot of people get more credit based upon how they look or how they present themselves and not their talent. Whereas I think in the 89, 90, 91 time frame, and I think till the mid-90s, I would say that it was based upon raw talent. I think it's kind of changed. Like, do you see what I'm saying?
Well, I remember that New York is a melting pot. We have all types of people there. I remember, I could tell you about friends later on, all from different countries. We all look different. I don't think it was about that, because if you remember tennis at the era, I'm about to be 46. Predominantly what you saw on TV were Caucasian players or European players.
Yeah.
You didn't see black players. You didn't see Spanish players that much. So when, for instance, the Williams sisters came out, Reebok. I remember when Reebok was becoming big in tennis. Here's the Williams sisters. When they did this tryout, we had so many minorities trying out. So it definitely wasn't about how you look.
It was talent.
About talent, for sure. And for me, I would say because, and I'm not trying to put myself up there. Since I was little, I was a very muscular, very strong person. And people always noticed that I was very athletic.
I don't think we have to argue that.
Well, I was very
athletic. I think we can see.
And I think it didn't matter what I did. It could be track, because I remember running that. I was very strong in it, And I think that's why I got noticed.
So, and again, didn't mean to deviate down that track. That wasn't written in. That was just kind of ad-lib there. But I think the moral of the story would be if I would have thought that out and written it before I asked it or just thought about it, I would have said back then versus now, if you put 10 people applying for a coaching job and one pot, and 9 of them were Caucasian male, and one of them was a Spanish-looking male or female, wouldn't matter. Mm-hmm. And everybody turned in their resumes, and everybody put in their stuff, and all the... in other words, I think these days, there's no doubt that one international player will be selected regardless of what. Yeah. But back then, I really feel like it was the best coach.
Correct. Yes.
And I feel like that today, these coaches that are selected because of that and lack of credentials, they don't know what the true benefit is having many coaches. Look, I have people tell me personally as a coach all the time, I do this aspect of what I do better than anybody else. And the humble coaches will say, hey, go see this guy for that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll be like, well, yeah, this person has a really wicked this, so go see them for that. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it was commonplace, as you said, in our youth, and I'm 40, soon to be 48, 47. And then now it's not commonplace at all. Correct? Yeah. Okay, so you're noticed, and you mentioned that you began playing tournaments. You told me there was this girl that beat you, and you weren't happy about it, and you went to the net. You said, "Well, congratulations, but you'll never beat me again." And then we kind of fast forward as we were just briefing this that you had spent some time at Bollettieri's camp.
Well, first of all, it came through Reebok. I mean, I didn't make the team, so
adversity.
They didn't call my name.
Let's go.
And my mom was like, "What? She beat everybody on that court." And
what do you think the reasons were?
I have no idea.
Like who you knew?
But the coach next...
How much money you had?
I have no idea. I don't think so. There was a coach next to Richard Williams.
So you beat everybody, but you didn't get selected. So there has to be some insider trading there.
Who knows? But the coach next to our court went up to the person in charge of the picking, and they said, she needs to be in. And
good for that
added
person.
Me to the team.
Let's go.
Thanks to that coach.
Do you remember that coach's?
I can't remember his name.
Oh,
he was an African American coach.
Lifetime.
He noticed me. He was a younger guy, and he's like, she needs to be in there. I did watch that, and she did beat everybody. I don't know why she wasn't picked, but they did end up picking me. So thanks to that, I was able to go to tournaments because they paid for it. I was able to do some training, which I was happy because my dad was really strict, and sometimes training with him was tough. So I got to get away from him a little bit.
So you actually went to tournaments with this coach?
No, the Reebok team. It was like 50 kids in the summer that they trained, those 50 kids.
How many chaperones did you have?
There was quite a few coaches for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of, it was all adults, all coaches that worked at Flushing Meadows. They were hired by them, USTA coaches, and they all took us, they all watched us, they took care of us. In the wintertime, they would cut 50 to 25.
Oh, big cuts.
So I made the 25. Priscilla and I did, and we'd get to play tournaments and stuff. So did Tanya. That's the girl that you were talking about.
That beat you. That
beat me the first time. My dad. She was from Russia. She had the Eastern grip, serve and volley, which doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, it still exists.
Well, not that much.
Okay.
It's kind of tough to do that now.
I try
nowadays.
My best.
Yes, but I remember her beating me like 3-3, and my dad's like, "You see, this is what you got to do. You let this girl beat you. You could have beat her." And I shook her hand, and because I knew my dad was angry, I was like, next time I see you, I'm going to beat you. And I did. I beat her every single time. And she could watch this. Every single time. Make sure I beat her.
So this can be backed up with the other person in the room.
Yes. For sure, yes. And I would tell that to all my friends. Anybody that beat me the first time, I was like, I'm going to beat you. So there was one girl that couldn't do that too. But yeah.
I've got this weird question. Yeah. Growing up an athlete myself, you always hear horror stories about young girls. My sister was one of them, or at least not a horror story, but there was some implications thereof. And you send a young girl or girls or a group of them or a group of players off with a bunch of coaches, and sometimes the coach doesn't really respect the youth and the babiness of these little girls and these players, and might do things. Another, I don't want to get like this video taken away, but there's a lot of times where coaches will get kids and not abuse them per se, but just do things that aren't right that a parent wouldn't do. Did you experience any of this type of stuff on
not on that?
Was there anything?
Not on that. I never felt that at the Reebok. They had females and male players.
Everything was copacetic.
Yeah, I don't think we ever thought that. I don't think in those days still, because you don't have the phones and you were really exposed to that. Not yet. You know what I mean?
And I only brought that up in my own experience. My sister, who's 4 years older than me, she passed away of breast cancer. But she's a phenomenal player. I mean, just phenomenal player. Like, she was like 4'11", 5 foot. And people would size her up like, who's this girl? And she was dominating California tennis. She was like number 6 in the Mid-Atlantic states. Amazing player. And my mother and father would go back and forth about letting her travel with the coach. And so I remember I was like 6 or 7, something like that. And a coach wanted to take my sister, and then my mom didn't want it, and my dad did. And, it wasn't a comfortable decision for either one of them. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think she did go on a place, and not anything bad happened, but there was just times where, you wanted mom or you wanted dad, or you just wanted to be at home, and it just wasn't comfortable. So you were comfortable, everything was copacetic.
I never felt because I think we were all tight. We were all a tight unit. I mean, we all knew each other really well, got to know each other well, so no. So
from this group of the final cut, that's when you are going to Florida?
No,
to Bollettieri?
I was with that team for 2 years, and honestly, the way I got it was one of the girls was picked before me. Her name is Karina. We still talk.
Yep.
She's from Romania. Great player. She just didn't have enough power, and I guess her parents were scared to let her go.
I wonder if she has any respect for Simona Halep.
I have no idea.
Anyway,
she doesn't play tennis anymore. But So I was second in line, and they asked me. They had picked, 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl.
So you were a lucky loser.
I was the lucky loser too.
Adversity, baby.
Yes. So I ended up getting the scholarship to go to Nick Bollettieri's.
Good
I
for
remember my mom going with me to the dinner, and we got to meet Carrillo, and at that point it was Mayor Dinkins was the mayor of New York, and
Mayor Dinkins.
They presented us the scholarship.
And Carrillo being Mary Carrillo, that does
yes.
solve the tennis commentating
Yes.
today, to this very day.
Correct. And then so they gave us the scholarship, and so I didn't go that summer. I didn't know I was going to move. My parents moved to Florida. They didn't tell me. They sent us to Belize for the summer, and
So you went back to Belize.
They sent us for the summer, like sometimes.
Matt, you guys bad kids or something?
No, they
Like,
wanted
you guys
us to.
are you sure you weren't bad? Because you've been sent to Belize twice.
No, we used to go sometimes for the summer.
Oh, you like to go?
In the winter, yes. We used to spend time with our
Oh,
grandparents.
so it wasn't like a forced departure.
No, but they sent us
bad.
for that summer. I guess they had planned to move, and they didn't tell us because we were like, why are we leaving for 2 months? And no one, usually we'd stay there, half of the summer to play tennis. So my brother and I go to the summer. We're like, another boring summer, because in Belize there's not much to do. But we moved to Florida. They didn't tell us.
You say in Belize there probably wasn't much to do. I'm guessing if you're probably still too young to remember everything, as anybody would, and it's not locked in your RAM, your random access memory. But I'm guessing you did find things to do, and I'm guessing that you learned a lot of good life lessons there.
Oh, sure.
Because ultimately, I think that was the reason why you were sent there. I know your father, and your father is one of the most purest human beings you'll ever meet.
Sure.
And I surely know he didn't want his daughter, that he's proud in Spanish, from Honduras, born and raised. He didn't want his daughter to be what the current United States is looked at as.
Well, I know
gluttons, obese, lazy.
Well, remember that in Latin or Hispanic families, family is important. So they wanted us to spend time with our grandparents. We were remember my grandfather had 3 boys, and he was the only one that had kids. So we were the only 2 grandkids they had.
Yeah, in comments, it's in my personal opinion, and we've talked about this. It's in my personal opinion that family is the first and foremost important thing, as well as your children. The same thing. Put a 1 in comments if you agree, and put a 2 in comments if you don't think family is the most important thing. And don't forget to click a thumbs up for this young lady, and don't forget to subscribe. It helps a lot. It would be very beneficial in this world that we live in. Okay, so Carla, you're in Florida. How old were you at this point?
I already had completed my freshman year.
High school?
In New York.
Oh, you're aging here. Okay.
Yes, in New York. Yes. So,
now, did you have a lot of tournament play between?
Oh, many.
Like, do you think overall, like, I don't necessarily, you're not going to remember your win and loss record, but do you feel like for the majority of the time you stepped on the court as a junior tournament player, you won the majority of your matches?
In the New York boroughs, yes, I dominated there. Once I went outside of that, that's where it was tough because you got to meet a lot of the international kids that used to play. And that's when it became tough and it became stressful. And my dad, it was tough to play tournaments when my dad went because I was competing against the person across me and I was competing against him. I'd watch him every time I'd hit a bad shot. It was just not good.
Yeah,
as you guys know, like many of the 90s dads, they're no joke.
Yeah, and I think we still try to be 90s parents.
You can't be like that these days. But yes.
So you are now a freshman in high school.
Well, I just completed my freshman year, and they sent us to Belize.
So do you think, I remember myself as a junior, the area I was in depended upon if I won. I moved a lot as a military brat, but for instance, in California, I think it was about 50-50 for me. I think I would, win a few rounds and then not go into the later rounds. And then I moved here to Alabama. My parents divorced and played tournaments here. And I would go far in the tournaments, but then I would run into this one guy. And this one guy's name was Clint Martin, respectively. I called him Rifle Arm. This guy was nasty. And I had just never seen a game. Like, we were serving and volleying then. I was playing with a wooden racket up until like a year or two prior to that. At serving and volleying. And this was the first true baseliner that could hit corners, have the variety, and he just lit my ass up. So I think, too, that being in different regions, you'll find someone that just doesn't match up very well against you.
No, yeah, I had a girl in New York, and we're friends, and she ended up playing for Ohio State and became the coach at Utah, for the men, female coach. So, yeah, I had that player that Sadaf, and she probably watched this and laughed. But she used to beat me by pushing the ball.
It happens.
pushing the ball, and she would moonball me all the time. My dad would get so mad. He's like, you're double her size and you're hit harder. How could you lose to her? So he would train me how to play against a moonball.
I know this feeling.
He'd be like, you're going to push her back and you're going to move forward to the net. You're going to end the point.
Yeah, I think
I did beat her a few times, but she hasn't.
You got to figure a moonballer. You have to figure out.
She has a number on me for sure. One of the few players that did.
Like once you figure out a moonballer, though, just like in basketball, there's different versions of this in multiple sports. Once you figure out how to beat them, they'll never beat you again.
No, I mean she did. She had her chance with me on clay. And on hardcourt was different. You can't do that all the time on hardcourt. But
yeah, and then the moonballer also gets they get used to just doing that, and it's their fail-safe mode, and that's where they feel comfortable. And when they are in that mode and they're getting blown off the court at that point, they fade away really quickly and start calling bathroom timeouts and hey, I got to tie my shoe and I left my bag in the car and you got to call a ref.
Yeah, but she never did that. Her parents were from Pakistan, so they were very strict. Her dad was very strict. But she used to play me indoor. So if you hit a moonball indoor, it hits you can't even get it.
Dang.
So that's why you had to train.
Yeah, I know junior parents that can afford to do so, that they will purposely go to tournaments in other states just to get away from their nemesis in their same community.
Sure.
It's kind of laughable at times. Okay, so you're at freshman year and
already completed freshman year.
Now you told me earlier you had 5 children and one of them had already graduated from the United States Air Force Academy. So I graduated college 22, I think, 23, 21, whatever. So that would put you having kids very early. So how old were you when you had your first child?
I think 20, 21.
21.
Yeah.
So during the time frame of IMG kind of climbing the ranks in a really good position, how did we go from there to having your first child, respectively? Graduated from the Air Force Academy, you did something right. But how did you go from the tournament tennis player all of a sudden to have a child at 18? Is that right? 19? 20?
Yeah.
So what happened there? What kind of led to the end of the junior aspect and led to your life? And then what led to the resurgence of your exceptional, very, very successful tennis coaching career?
I played high school tennis. I played for a high school, and we lived in South Florida, and tennis there is very high level. Our high school team is not like most of the high school teams here that, you have 1 or 2 players that are good. I think our whole team was good. I went in 10th grade. They wouldn't let me challenge anyone because, they had seniority, so I had to wait a whole year to really play. I mean, I think I played doubles a few times. Still played some tournaments.
Adversity.
Still played a few tournaments, but my parents were struggling in Florida. My mom had to work several jobs, and my dad, he would have to cut I remember, cut people's yards. It was tough for them. It wasn't as easy or easier in New York to play tennis. They didn't have as many programs. Everything was further away. It's not like you could hop on a train or a bus or walk. It was just a completely different environment. They didn't have those free programs or programs for kids that maybe couldn't afford to do lessons and stuff. So it was a lot tougher. We still trained. My dad trained us every day. We'd get us up early. We'd train at night. We'd hit with a lot of people. I just didn't get to play as many tournaments as I did in New York. It was unaffordable. But my junior year, I got to be the number 2 at our school. Some people probably know the school is Stoneman Douglas High School, is where that shooting happened.
Yes, that was your high school, Stoneman Douglas. Yes, there wasn't a mass shooting that happened.
Yes,
there?
There was a mass shooting there. Very high competition. The number 2 player does not get to go to state, even though I had beat everybody, as the number 2 player.
Adversity.
Yeah, so I didn't get to go. My senior year, I decided not to play for high school tennis. I met a guy at a park with my dad, and he's like, I can help your daughter out. I can train her to get to that next level. And usually my dad is not very trusting of people. And so he let him train me, and, he started changing my game a little bit. Taught me a one-handed backhand. Looking back at it, I wish he never did that. I should have stuck to my two-handed backhand because it's always been a weapon. I moved to West Palm Beach. I didn't go to college.
So sorry to interrupt you there. As a lifetime one-hander, and I'm 47, born in 77, born into the game my father played, coached. Anyway, I don't find the one-hander as being a disadvantage. I find those that make the excuse about the one-hander are those that don't have proper footwork, and those that don't have proper timing, and those that haven't practiced enough. I know this isn't you. Obviously, but I'm just saying that's how I feel about that.
No, I don't say that the one. But if you were born were born, you played with two hands your whole childhood, and then at 17, 18, going to change to a one-handed backhand.
Good point.
That is tough to make that change, especially when you're playing challengers. How are you going to make, thinking about it back, you're like, how are you going to adjust? That's tough to have confidence in that shot when you've been playing two the whole time.
Yeah, kind of a culture shock,
That's
I guess.
very tough, but, my dad trusted him. So I didn't go to college. I would train and play challenge tournaments, and my dad was paying all this money out, and he couldn't afford it. He did it for a year. I got to meet a lot of people, got to bump again into the Williams sisters, because the coach that I was with would visit them when they were living in West Palm Beach.
So do you think it's safe to say that maybe a change of this stroke at, this distant point in your tennis career at this point, do you think it's kind of like a child being moved from one school to the other, or being pulled out of California to Alabama, or whatever? Do you think it's just like a complete culture shock, and it just kind of did it kind of hampen your development, do you think, that switch?
No, I don't think so, because the gentleman that was helping me out, he had offered, I could have played for college. I could have full scholarship.
Yes.
But I didn't like school.
Okay.
I hated school, and looking back at that, I'm like, well, maybe I made the wrong decision, but things happen for a reason.
Yes.
And my dad even said, be mindful. What are you really, think about it. You're gonna have to work really hard if you don't go to college. I could have gone that route and just played for school and had a, college degree, but I chose the other way, because I was like, well, I think I can do it. It's my dream, blah, blah, blah. And I hate school anyway, so I'm gonna go this route.
All right, so this is the most interesting interview ever for me personally. So I'm intrigued here. So don't forget to subscribe. Click a thumbs up for Carla. That definitely helps out the algorithm. Thank you very much. But okay, so now you're in the high school years. You're tournament playing. You're doing your thing. And let's say we graduate from high school. Let's say we graduate. 17, 18 years old. You're in Florida now?
I was still in Florida.
Okay, in Florida.
He lived in West Palm Beach.
Okay.
So it's not too far from where, my parents lived.
Okay.
So maybe an hour drive.
So you play high school tennis to the completion of high school?
I did not play my senior year. I decided not to waste my time, is what I said.
So that's when tennis started to change a bit, obviously. So what happened then? Why did you begin to back away from tennis, and how did you get to the point where you started having children that quick? Not the pride, just interests me, because here you are.
Well, after we trained for a whole year, and again, he would take me traveling. My parents just couldn't afford it. At that point, my dad was no longer living in Florida. He's working in Wisconsin. My parents were kind of distancing themselves from each other. And my dad's like, I can't keep doing it. It's just too much.
Understandable.
And I understood that, so I came back home, lived with my mom, and she's like, well, now you got to get a job. She's like, you're not going to stay here. Got to get a job. I remember, applying for one of the schools there. Did one semester, actually. That's it. And I still took lessons. I worked. And I paid a coach, to keep helping me out. But after realizing it, man, I'm getting older. I'm 19 now. I'm like, this is not, what am I doing? I stopped pretty much playing tennis and started working.
Amazing. This is getting very interesting. So at 19, 20, you have your 21, you have your first child.
Yeah.
And are you able to, at this point, are you married at this point? Or?
Yeah. I was, engaged to get married.
Okay. And then you have your first child. At that point, were you able to play tennis? You're here.
No, I didn't touch a tennis racket for 8 years.
For 8 years.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, respectably, I've seen you hit the ball a few times, and to me, you're as good as anybody. I've been at the U.S. Open stringing, and then been to high-level tournaments my entire life. My dad used to bring me to them. I've been around the block, and personally, I think you're a world-class player. So, why didn't you touch the racket? Just raising children, or?
Well, before Jonathan, before I got married.
And Jonathan's your oldest.
Yes, before I got married. I did play a few times. I played in the league, a 4-5 league, and and it was fine. But it was like, what am I doing? This is a waste of time for me. These ladies get upset if I hit them, and not that I was better than them, because I was younger. I played at a high level, so I'm like, this is kind of stupid for me to do. And then I just kind of lost interest, in it. So I had Jonathan, and I was raising him, and I didn't think about grabbing a racket. I'm a mom, and at that time I had a stepson too. So it was like, I'm busy. I'm pretty busy.
So hypothetically, you have 6 kids.
Well, yes, correct.
Wow.
Well, I had,
Wow, and here you still are.
Yeah.
By the way, that's adversity once again. I've written down here this entire interview, adversity, and I think I've said it every time. You've gone from moving to Belize to moving back. You've gone from stuff in Brooklyn. You've gone from you weren't selected, and you've gone to now your oldest at 20 or whatever, and then now you've got a sixth one. Now the 6th one, I'm guessing, was your husband's biological child before you met.
He was like about 2 years old, so
So you met an older gentleman.
Yes. But he was older than me, yes. But
So,
he was like 2, and so when I had Jonathan, I think my stepson was like, at that point, let me see, 4. He's 4 or 5 years older than Jonathan. So let's think about this.
If you don't mind me asking, where was your husband at this point? Your first husband. You have 2, but where was your first husband from? Like, was he American?
Well. From New York as well.
And was he American, Caucasian, or was he Spanish?
Well, Hispanic descent.
So where was
his parents? I guess his ancestry is Dominican.
Okay, so you married a Dominican gentleman from New York. So, look, it's been my experience that sometimes in the Spanish world, respectively, that the guys can be pretty controlling. Did your ex-husband, I'm guessing, did your ex-husband play tennis, or did he just keep you from doing it?
No, he didn't play tennis. I mean, at first when we were dating, he would try and stuff, but no, we didn't play. I mean, he worked, I took care of the kids, and that's just how it was. So.
Now, could you have played if you wanted to, or was it just...
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so your oldest son... you had very young, and you told me your oldest son had graduated from the United States Air Force Academy, not just enlisted into the Air Force, but graduated from the United States Air Force Academy, managed to score a 32 on his ACT. How did mom go from, how do you think, and maybe this is not professional, but how did mom go from, I had enough, I've been through all this adversity, I was really telling people at the net, you will never beat me again, just fighting, and then all of a sudden you have a child, and your tennis goes away, and then boom, like you come back with a vengeance in the coaching world. So what kind of led to that fuel needle going back to full? You obviously had some burnout there. Maybe it was family economics. And then all of a sudden, wham, your gas gauge, you're full throttle, and you've taken this coaching thing with a freaking storm. What caused that? What was the fundamental force of you finding that energy again to trust and go?
Well, I think when I started playing tennis again, I mean, it started little bits and pieces. I was living in Dominican Republic. There was a gentleman there that his girlfriend, now wife, played for Stetson University, and he was looking for someone to hit with her, and he played himself. He was a 4-5 player, and I was like, okay, let me do this again. Let me try. I was very rusty. I could tell I was super rusty because I couldn't hit some of her shots back. They're almost like D1 players, by the way.
I think I remember someone that called me rusty at one point.
Yes. But I was very rusty, and and she was almost laughing like, this is a tennis player. And so I would hit with him, and then, because I was living in Dominican Republic, there was not much to do there. And I was in very good shape. At this point, I already had my second son, and, I was like 27. I'm like, okay, I started hitting against the wall. So I started getting into it little by little. And then when they left, I stopped again. And then I moved back to, Florida. Moved to Florida. I put Jonathan in tennis lessons. I was like, maybe Jonathan could learn tennis. I want to see if he likes it. So I put him in those beginner things, and I started getting an interest in tennis again. I was like, okay. I was watching him, and kind of reminded me everything I did as a kid. I was like, And then we moved again. We moved to Virginia, and there I met a couple where the husband played tennis, and I started playing tennis again.
Tennis community is awesome.
Yep, they had I lived in Charlottesville, and they had 8 hard courts on one side, 8 on the other side of the neighborhood. They had clay and mixed with carpet, and he wasn't a very good player, but it was my chance to play. So I would hit with him almost every afternoon.
Now you were still married at this point?
Yes.
So what did your You said he would not allow you to
But
play.
it was his one of the managers there that he trusted.
Oh, he had to.
Yeah, we lived in the same neighborhood. His wife was Spanish, like me, and it was she was happy because he had something to do. He was a little bit, older than us, so I got to play some tennis and stuff. And I started playing league, but again, once you remember how to play tennis, you kind of get kicked out of that stuff.
Yeah, this reminds me of the tennis community. The tennis community it's very interesting. I always tell young students that no matter where you go in the world, if you have a tennis racket and you know how to, carry yourself out there, and you can at least hang out with the well-mannered ones, then you're gonna find a new network of people.
I did there, by the way. I mean, I remember going to UVA and University of Virginia, and the coach there was watching me. He's like, "Where have you played tennis? How old are you?" I'm like, I was like, no. I'm not because I was still very young there. I'm not a college kid. I'm not, He's like, "Oh, wow, you should come out here and hit with the girls sometime." And, because I started getting to know a lot of people. I got a little job. One lady, she recommended me to do some lessons for high school tennis on Saturdays. And I had no idea about coaching, by the way.
And what year is this? About 2009?
2000.
If I've been following
2008.
2008.
2008. Okay. And I remember they gave me like 50 kids. And I'm like, to one coach.
Nightmare.
I was like, what am I going to teach these kids?
You can't. You got to play games, and that's
was
another problem. And
yeah,
we could do a whole nother video on that about parents dropping their kids off, and there's 500 kids, and they're just throwing the ball in the air to catch it. And
that was the worst. Probably the worst,
story, yeah.
worst thing I ever did, because I don't think those kids learned anything, and I was new to coaching. I didn't even know what the heck I was doing. So
here you are in 2008. Mm-hmm. That would put, based upon my calculations, that would put your oldest son at that point around 6 or 7, and that it has to be. And let's say here comes.
He was born 2002, something like that.
Yeah, so right on there. And so here we come to around the 2010s and moving forward. You have a second son. He as well is at the Air Force Academy, which is just an amazing feat. That's almost unfathomable, by the way. Congratulations there. But here you approaching the middle 2010s. We're in 2015s. Teaser alert, I do know this young lady in front of me. She's my wife, and she has an incredible story. And for years, I've wanted to have this discussion in a calm sense of things. But with 5 kids, we tend to get pretty chaotic. And I just felt like finally doing it today after doing some research and writing it out. So we fast forward to 2010, 2011, and I stumble across you because you are wanting to get your coaching certificate. Mm-hmm. I was the closest person to her geographically that was recommended to her for me to mentor. And from the very first night that she called me, well, actually I saw her picture first, and I was single at this point, and so I saw her picture first. And I was like, okay, it's an international player. She's wanting to become a coach. I thought she was in, Spain for all I knew. She was like, you had a jean skirt on, a sleeveless shirt, looked strong. And I'm like, okay. And at the same point in time, I started this interview with saying that American coaches that are actually credible are getting dismissed for those that just look like you. And so I had some reservations about that for that same reason.
Which is sad.
Because I know so many really well coaches, regardless of age, size, shape, that have worked their ass and they're passionate. There's this guy we know here locally, no need to mention names, and he's like 80 years old. My dad's 87, and I would rather have either one of them coach any of my kids, including myself or you in this town, because they're going to give them stuff that they don't hear every day. Right. They're going to get things broken down in a different way. Why? Once again, we alluded to the fact that it's good to have multiple coaches, but everybody's too selfish now, self-absorbed to delegate help when they need it, thus developing the better player. Right. So we stumble across one another, and as I recall, Jonathan could hit the ball a little bit. I mean,
yeah, very
little. Very little.
At that point when you met me, the reason I contacted you was not you. I contacted many. I was trying to get help. Priscilla, there it is again, my best friend. She pushed me. She's like, "You're going through this hard time. You want to make a change in your life." I was in my 30s now. She's like, "Why don't you?" I remember she printed out the whole thing to get your USPTA certification.
That's a big book.
She shipped
the whole thing.
She printed the whole thing.
All the way through level 1.
Me. shipped the whole thing to me so I can go page by page, and she would ask me
even
questions.
the pictures?
Pictures, everything.
Oh my goodness.
She had a job where she could like copy
even the tabs where you
everything.
separate?
She made the whole punches, everything for me.
Oh my goodness.
Because she knew, she's known me since I was young, since I started tennis, and she's like, it can't be that you just let this go. She's like, no way, you worked so hard, your dad busted your ass, and you're like, here, you're gonna give it up? This is all you know. So that's what got me pushing into it, and I started playing tennis, serious tennis, every day. Every day I would go out to the park and hit against guys. And so that's why I was like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. I'm in shape now. I'm learning more things. And so when I contacted you, or not you really, I was messaging people that
you were hitting with multiple people then, yes.
A lot of people.
We hit with
them.
them.
So my
yes.
game was, it was getting crisp again. It was.
And we were training all the time, just you and I, as retired players in Panama City for days on end, for hours, sometimes 6-8 hours a day. We'd hit the ball, 6-8 hours a day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you think at this point you get your energy back to how it was when you were a junior? So I feel like based upon this interview, your life started about the time you can remember, and the tennis. Your dad, you watched struggles, metal nets, take them down, and go here and go there, and this person would beat you, all this stuff, right? And then you have a child, and like any young woman, I'm guessing. I'm a psychology graduate, and I'm an idiot. I'm gonna remain humble. I'm an idiot, but I know that people go through ebbs and flows in development. And so here you are, super confident junior tennis player. You go through some ebbs and flows. You have a child, on top of the world having a child, but at the same time, now you realize you're young and you have this, what was probably considered, and maybe not, some extra baggage, and oh my gosh, I didn't get to live my life. And then all of a sudden we meet, and by the way, when we met, I think we would spend 10 hours, like we would get done training, I would drive back to Mobile, which was about 3.5 hours away. I would call you when I got in the car leaving, we would get there and speak all the way on the phone until daylight when I had to go teach again, and we would do tennis trivia. So we bought this tennis trivia book that my dad had gotten us, and we would answer tennis trivia from the likes of vintage 19s, 20s tennis all the way up to the current day. But do you think at this point in time, what finally gave you the ability to let your passion go, your destiny, was that finally you had met someone that said, you know what, you're good at this, go do it?
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
You had no reins. You were, go do it. Right? And I think for me, the most amazing thing about this adventure is seeing that. Like when I first met Carla, I drove down to Panama City, and she got in, and I had a Subaru. I was a Subaru service manager anyway, in Vermont. And so I had a Subaru Forester with snowboard racks on it still. You remember, I'm in Panama City Beach, Florida with Vermont tags and a Subaru ski rack, the green tag. And she gets in, and she won't even look at, she was just looking out the window. She was in the past. She wouldn't look over. You had little Lily, who was like 1.5, 2 then.
She was 2 weeks old, yeah.
And like, she was so much in a shell. Like, she wouldn't talk. She was so petrified of what she was doing, coming out of this, or heading into a divorce at this point, tough situation. She was so petrified to do anything, because surely in your head was, I got kids, oh shit, how am I going to survive, and all this other shit. And for you to have done that at that moment, to start your life again with 3 children and a stepson, 4, to me is the most courageous thing that I've ever met anyone do in my entire freaking life. Because there'd be no way I would not have the courage to, even if I was in a terrible relationship, I couldn't imagine walking away from my kids. And for me, for you to have done that and to turn that situation into your current is amazing. And this is the next chapter of this. So the current chapter, I've said successful tennis coach. I've said you're doing well. Okay, but there's a common misconception though that tennis coaches are rich.
Right.
Okay, I'll speak for ourselves for a moment. We have a business, and we are blessed to do that business at a club, but no one pays us a dime. We buy our own balls, our own coaching carts, our own tennis rackets, our own strings, our own overgrips, the own ice for tournaments, or the trophies, or the whatever, the list goes on. And by the time we buy our groceries for our 5 kids, or now 3 in-house, 2 in college, 1 already out, by the time we buy laundry detergent, most months we actually lose money.
Yep.
In so much as we have almost had to stop this entirely. Mm-hmm. Now I say that because what makes us keep doing it, Carla? Why do we keep doing this?
Well, for me, I could tell you at first when I started coaching, it was more for me. For me,
Obviously, you hadn't done it before.
For me to feel validated. That my dad didn't waste all that money to introduce me to a sport. That has given me a lot.
I think all coaches that were players feel self-validated because most coaches that were players, in my experience, were players that never really, played D1 or So I get it.
I wanted to prove myself something to myself, and so at first I think it was selfish, just me trying to I guess prove to the world that hey, I'm still good. I could still.
Well, congratulations, you proved it.
So, but I remember you telling me, hey, don't think of yourself as the player. Think of yourself
as a coach.
Now as the coach, and what are you going to do for them?
Some of the earliest memories I have, my father was a physician in the Navy and then retired into private practice. And since I was a young boy, he either wanted me to do something coaching related or military medicine, whatever. And the reason being is he would always remind me that I'm really good with expressing my feelings amongst all ages and whatever. So he had me teaching clinics at San Diego and Encinitas when I was very young. I don't even remember it, but he said I was out coaching the serve, but I feel like for me, the coaching is definitely not riches. It's definitely not treasure. For me, the most priceless thing is to have a new student come to you, regardless of age. And I'll give you a couple examples. I have many students over 26 years of doing this that are out of college already that I taught from the first ball and watched them develop and go from either a couch potato or a potato chip eater to a college graduate, high ACT scores, in a career, and they still call to this day, right? To me, that's the priceless part. The riches are for myself to be able to see someone increase their longevity and able to have a smile on their face and able to set their screen down and able to smile when they're sweating and able to, those are the priceless things for me. So when it comes though to paying the bills, I know a lot of times it's impossible to do that and you fall behind. So why don't you walk away? Why don't you just say, forget it, I'm ebbing and flowing down to the negative? Why don't you walk away? What keeps you doing it?
Well, one, because this is what I know how to do. That's number one.
Very honest answer.
Two, I feel like we make a difference in people's lives.
That is the answer.
I mean, a lot of times when we get a kid, we get all types of kids who come from nothing, kids that have too much, kids that are forced, kids that want to really learn. And just watching you starting with someone from the beginning and then watching as they get older, where they get to, I mean, it's rewarding. It's just, okay, you passed on your knowledge to them. Whatever
Absolutely.
plus more, because you learn more yourself. You learn with every student.
And the same story that I wrote 10 pages on or more, the same story you don't have to tell. You know why you don't have to tell it? Because you emanate it. You can meet Carla and that hasn't been easy. When you communicate, it hasn't been easy. So moving forward, though, I'm going to kind of go into the future of tennis for a minute. We know that tennis coaches aren't rich. If there are some, tennis coaches rolling out there in Bentleys, they're extremely lucrative clubs with salaries. We don't have that. If we don't teach lessons, we don't own insurance. Imagine how much it is for us to pay our own insurance with 5 kids.
There's a gentleman out here at the mic, the one that got us here. He said, "You guys are like farmers."
Yeah, we never leave. We can't afford to leave.
If it rains, you're screwed.
So, for the past like couple of weeks, I do some kind of short videos, sometimes with deep thoughts, and I like to study and read all night long. And I've been immersed in this the AI technology and begin to experiment with using it so I don't get left behind. Some say AI won't take your job. It's someone else will take your job that can utilize AI. And for 26 years, I've done all these thumbnails. I've done it out of my head. And honestly, currently, when I go into AI and I try to experiment with it, what do? I always delete it and just make it myself because I know the flavor. It's getting better, though. So we now get into this time where the economists of the world, the executives of the world, and I don't mean like bottom of the barrel, I mean the smartest people in the world are saying, in the next 2 years, a year and a half, you're going to see hundreds of millions of jobs go away. And you'll read in the articles though, hey, AI is going to make 1 million more jobs, but what they're not telling you is out of those 1 million new created jobs, the new AI chatbots will fill those jobs, and it just doesn't get reported that way. So I was watching something the other day. It was a podcast, and it was from a former Google CEO. I think it was on either Thon Vio or Theo Vaughn or Lex Friedman, respectively, one of the two. And they listed off, something like 8 or 20 even jobs that it's impossible they'll still survive by 2027. And a lot of those jobs being anything from doctors, even from surgeons with robotic arms. I saw something the other day, a product that was already been developed and in use in the Asian area, China especially, where you just get out of bed and these robotic arms make your bed perfectly. Like in one, your bed's made. So, I remember watching an Air Force Academy graduation speech, and I remember the commencement speaker indicated the most important thing you can do is when you get out of bed is to make it.
Yeah.
You must make your bed. And in other words, you must earn your keep. So my question is for you, Carla. Do you think you could ever have an AI bot or a robot share with you the stories you've heard and or learned? Better yet, and to motivate you to get out there on that tennis court and to work hard, support your family, to love others, to be equal, but yet to fight your ass off? Do you think a robot can do that?
No, absolutely not. And I don't think that any coaching job would be taken over by a robot. You have to have emotions. Many of my coaches, even those, some of the coaches, maybe they didn't physically show me how to do a forehand or a backhand, but some of them were like my therapists.
Exactly.
I was telling my daughter, I was like, I went through a lot with your grandpa. He was very tough on me on the tennis court. And the coach that I had when we were doing challenges, a lot of times he would just sit down and talk to me.
That's great.
And just talk to me. And that was a lesson in itself. It wasn't even showing me how to hit a million forehands this way and a million backhands that way. You could never get that from a robot. You need that connection with someone, that chemistry with someone. And that's what coaches are. A lot of times when we teach students, sometimes some of the female players I teach, I feel like I'm their therapist. They tell me what's going on, and then after they tell me, I try to mold their lesson into what I feel could help them that day. It's just, I don't think you can ever.
I couldn't agree totally. The beauties of things like orchestras, no disrespect, but versus things like rap music, things like someone strumming a guitar beautifully or playing, Beethoven's Seventh or something, versus some digital thing. It's that involves human fluidity. You go to a concert ballerina, watch her perform, just her and herself. It's her show by herself. Couple opening acts or whatever, but when she comes out, everybody's dead focused on that beautiful, strong as hell, bloody toed, really mangled feet, hard ass athletes, fluidity. There's just no way. You can look at some of the greatest paintings of all time, Da Vinci's and Michelangelo's and Monet and Manet, and the list goes on. De Gaulle. And they try to replicate the beauty of the flowing human body. And I really feel like the best tennis is fluid human body. Look, the lovely Federer, the fighting Djokovic, the jerky but omnipresent and vibrant Nadal. And I say that because these are all these people remember. I mean, I can go back in time and say Pete Sampras and his backhand overhead, or Jimmy Connors and his boom against Krickstein. I can go back and talk about...
That's why people watch tennis. You have to have personality.
Yeah, I can go back to Don Budge and Bill Tilden and say, hey, smoke a Camel, it'll suit you well. Or I can go back to when Carla was a junior, Virginia Slims. Do you remember Virginia Slims?
I remember watching the Virginia Slims
Chris
at Madison
Evert.
Square Garden. I never got to watch it in person, but on TV I got to watch it. Yeah.
All right. So, Carla, and ending, I do want to thank you totally for sitting down with me for this long time. I think I've edited it to like an hour and 10 minutes at this point. But I guess for me, I just want to extend to you a really huge congratulations. I say that, and we've known each other now 15 years. And the biggest thing that is poignant, it sparks the most intrigue to me, is sometimes I look at my own children, and I look at things, and I'm like, there's just no way, no matter how bad it was, I wouldn't be able to leave them. And I do know that your situation was rough and was much more graphic than you alluded to. And for you to walk away to me as a stranger and the complete unknown. You didn't know. I told you on the floor one night, I'm not going to bullshit you. Here's my deal, and this is the fact. Because I've been through some, here's my shit, and that's it. I'm gonna leave it at that. Mm-hmm. I knew you had kids. I knew the situation at that point. I think I told you the truth straight up, and I think that you believe that. I think you believe that truth, and you believe. And, in this world, how many guys tell people bullshit just to get them in the sack or something, right? Mm-hmm. So the courage that you had to do that with 3 children and a stepson, to me was, I think, one of the strongest superwoman moments, hands down, that I've ever seen in my life, because I wouldn't have been able to do it. And you made the decision that put your oldest son as an intelligence officer and the Air Force Academy, the next one there, the next child applying, the next 2 will follow suit. And I understood very early on what you did. I understood that. I understand that you just did something that I wouldn't be able to do. And I've always respected that. And I've always said, no matter what, am I going to not do my best for that thing? Because she just went into the unknown with absolutely nothing. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are. But I think it's also what surrounds you, too.
The tennis community is a good one.
Yeah, but I think I had good surroundings,
So I guess in ending, thank you for the interview. Perseverance is key. Adversity had come up about 57 times here. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think these days it's much more difficult to find those that will fight through so much adversity. They just want to quit. We see that a lot on the tennis court these days.
Yeah, I think that tennis is in trouble right now.
I don't think it's in trouble.
I think it's in trouble because we don't have the youth.
It's not the sport that's in trouble. It's the youth. It's right, the youth that's in trouble.
They're not fighters. They're not fighters. I'll give you an example. We were here this weekend for a tournament, and I was telling some of the young ones, there's no way that you guys are tired when the older ones here, 50, 60, myself.
Still going.
We're still going. I was like, come on.
Yeah. And this will be another video for the next time. And I have a couple more people we're going to interview here in the not too distant future. And we'll get into this with some of them, psychologists, physicians, that I have that I would like to talk to. But just having the screen in the hand as a baby, even intermittently throughout early childhood, it just gives kids 2 things. One, the noises and the ads that pop up and the sounds. It's all by design. The lights. It's all designed to make like the cell phone like sunflower seeds when I was a kid. Like you had to have sunflower or you bit your nails, right? Now kids, they don't have the screen. They get pissed off at their parents. They don't want to do anything because they're so upset about getting that screen taken away from them. And then they go all frantic and they get bored in 5 seconds. They can't even sit still. And I think this translates a lot on the tennis court, mm-hmm. and I think you get someone out here, regardless of young age. The older ones, like we've taught many students 70 years old plus that are killing it right now.
They fight, yeah.
Fighting their ass off.
They try.
But you get sometimes an 8 and 10-year-old or 12-year-old, like you said, that's given too much, and they start to sweat one drop, and they're going, oh, I'm going to go inside and get my cold water. Like a little tiny baby girl telling you this stuff, like waving her hand up like she's a princess or something. And just Carla and I weren't raised that way,
I can tell you something.
And we don't deal with that very well. And we don't. We tell the kids, you're going to work harder. We're not meant for you.
Well, that's why you have 2 top players in the tour and the rest at the bottom. That's it.
Well done, my lady.
I'm like, I can't stand sitting too long.
Well done, girl. Yeah, my knees are locked up. Okay, don't forget to subscribe. Carla did a very good job there, and dealt with a lot of writing for me to get there. So hopefully it came out okay. Much love. See you guys next time.